Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So today I want to talk about some important things that I've learned with regards to bugging out with family. So let's get to it. First of all, I want to direct you to the City Prepping and Urban Preppers channel. They do a variety of videos on this topic of family preparedness. In particular, City Prepping did a video on the family bug out bag system. I thought he had a lot of great ideas in that video, so go check it out. Now, I'm not going to be talking a lot about gear today, or necessarily ways to pacify or corral your children. I will offer a few pieces of advice with regards to that, but most of this conversation is going to revolve around what you personally can do to make a family bug out scenario flow a bit more smoothly. Now, one of the most obvious trial runs that you can do for a bug out scenario is going to be camping with your family. Bugging out is going to be 90% camping. Now, asides the running and gunning, the evacuation factors, the stress of being forced into that sort of situation, and all the security related factors that might come into play in a grid down scenario, really 90% of bugging out is going to be just like camping. It's basically a downgrade in your standard of living, where you no longer have the luxury of climate control, electricity, running water, a nice comfortable bed. You're not going to have all the modern ways to cook food and all the modern consumables that we enjoy today. Another thing you might want to try to simulate a bug-in scenario would be a simulated power outage, where you either have a rule that all the power in the house must be shut off, with the exception, of course, of your freezer, because you don't want your food to go bad, or you could just flip the breaker and power everything down for a day and see how the family fares in that environment. You might come to find that it's quite the enjoyable experience for the first couple days, of course. Now, for obvious reasons, children can be a very big security risk. Their behavior is very sporadic and random. They're not always going to listen and respect your commands. They may draw unwanted attention towards you. They run the risk of putting the group as a whole in danger. Of course, they cannot fend for themselves, so they're going to be wholly dependent on you for their care. Keeping children satisfied in a grid down situation, if you have them, is going to be crucial, not only for your own sanity and stress level, but also for your own personal security. Depending on the age of your child and their expectations, bringing some sort of toy or game or something of that nature that they can play with and keep themselves occupied with can drastically minimize their restlessness. Now, everybody's parenting style and relationship is going to be different with their children. Thus, your disciplinary methods is going to be something that's largely unique to your family. If you do find yourself in a wilderness situation where you have to bug out, sometimes telling your children small fibs for their own safety isn't always a bad thing. If you think about it, a lot of people have no problem deceiving their children into thinking that there's a fat man who comes down once a year through their chimney and puts presents under a tree. So telling them that if they don't be quiet in the middle of the night, that a bear is going to come and get them, that might seem mean-spirited, but the reality is that's a tactic that works. Sometimes you have to play on your children's fears in order to get them to cooperate, because the reality is they're not going to be able to listen to reason in those situations. You might be aware that their childish behavior and the noises that they're making when you're moving through an area, say, or at night, is a beacon for people with malintent, but they don't understand that. So one of the best ways to get children to cooperate is with deception. Once again, this is for their own good. I know some sensitive snowflake parents out there might have a problem deceiving their children, even if it means keeping them safe from bands of thieves, thugs, and marauders, but that's just something that you're going to have to do. Now, one of the main things I want to say in this video, it's very seldom that you're going to have family members. If you consider yourself a prepper, like 90% of preppers are males, it's very unlikely that you're going to convince people in your family to take to the task of preparedness with the same amount of enthusiasm as you. So it's very likely that if you haven't been able to train your family in the ways that I've talked about, disguising it as something like camping or hiking or paintball or something like that that might simulate some sort of scenario that you would come across in a grid down situation, then you're going to be tasked with leading a group of people who are probably less capable in all aspects of the preparedness spectrum than you. Some of you might say that the weakest link in your family is going to be the weakest person. Maybe it's the youngest child who is fully dependent on you, the parent, to protect them. But my way of thinking is a bit different. I think that the weakest link in that sort of scenario is going to be you. It's going to be the leader. If you get easily stressed out, your family is going to be easily stressed out. If you are very stoic, collected, and optimistic, your family will follow in suit. However, if you are short-tempered and pessimistic in your thinking, this will diminish the hope of the people who look up to you. If your family sees you easily stressed out, they're probably going to get stressed out. Their anxiety level is going to go up. So you need to be a leader and understand that perhaps they're not as prepared as you, but if you lead in the right way by focusing on their strengths, by trying to be an optimist, by not freaking out on them when they fall short of your expectations, you're going to see much, much better results. You will come to find with children in particular that they are highly adaptable. There's a thing called neuroplasticity, and it's a person's ability to habituate to new conditions, new surroundings. Children have a much greater capacity to do this, and adults, because it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And if we're talking about a disaster where there's a drastic downgrade in the standard of living, it's going to be a lot harder for an adult to necessarily adapt to that than a child. Children have a capacity to be far more flexible and resilient. Their neural pathways and neural networks are still in the process of being developed. Unlike adults whose thoughts tend to drift down the beaten paths of their habits and personality. They have the ability and the flexibility to grow into a new environment. Take for instance a seedling. Now imagine, for instance, a large tree fell on top of that seedling and it was now bent over. The only way it can grow if it grows around that tree. So it'll find a way around that tree because it's still flexible, it's still malleable, it can still grow and conform to its surroundings. Now, if you had a bigger tree and an even bigger tree fell on that, likely what's going to happen is either the tree's going to break, but it's not going to have the same degree of flexibility. It might grow another branch that can grow around, but the core trunk of that tree is fixed. It's not changing, it's not going anywhere. It's basically stuck in that spot, in that form, for the rest of its existence. Now, I'm not saying that if you're an adult or if you're older that you're screwed and you're not going to be able to adapt. Obviously, you as a leader of your group are the one who should be theoretically hardest, so you should be the one who's most physically capable. You should be the one who's most mentally capable, spiritually capable, and emotionally capable. All of the capabilities should be maxed out with you. That's another thing I want to talk about with respect to physical preparedness. Remember, those of you who are neglecting physical preparedness right now, that you will be a drag on your family. Every weakness that you possess is going to carry over to be a burden on those you are with if you do have to bug out. So bear that in mind at all times and let that be motivation to you to remember, not even just in terms of preparedness or bugging out, but just in life in general. If you are not taking care of yourself, and you know that you're probably going to get some chronic disease because you haven't been exercising, you haven't been eating well, and that is going to lead to high medical bills for your family. If you don't get your affairs in order and if you leave your family a bunch of debt, what kind of person are you really if you do that? If you're putting your family in a negative when you are supposed to be a provider, you are somebody they look up to for guidance and support, and you basically leave them with all these medical bills, the grief of losing you, and the debt load when they have to pay for your funeral thereafter. So it's my firm belief that you have to lead by example. Now that said, all capable family members should have all hands on deck. And if you were efficient in your parenting skills up until this point, then hopefully your children are going to listen to you when you instruct them to do something. Now, in terms of the practical aspects of running drills, having muster points, having a planning of action in case you got split up, like I say, those are all going to be things that are unique to you and your family. Every able-bodied person in your family should have some degree of familiarity with firearms, firearm safety, and other forms of personal protective equipment. They should also understand the absolute basics of survival: how to hunt, how to fish, how to field dress an animal, how to start a fire, how to build a shelter, how to get water, and how to purify water. And above all else, your family should know how to function as a team. Getting into a rhythm of working as a team where everybody knows their role, everybody has their job, and to minimize the amount of dead weight as much as possible. Obviously, in the case of very young children, they're not going to be able to pull any weight whatsoever. It's just a fact. And because you love them, it's important that you're willing to sacrifice to nurture them throughout this period, because after all, the children are the future. I look forward to reading the comments in this video, and I would ask that if you are a parent, if you're not worried about confidentiality, that you post the age of your child in the comments, or just a general ballpark figure. You could say toddler, child, adolescent, early adult, whatever, just to give us all a sense of from where your perspective emerges. I think it'd be useful to get insights from different parents who have children of different ages currently, because it's one thing to have had a toddler 20 years ago, and it's another thing to have a toddler in the modern day. It's a different system, it's a different world, and yes, I know generally speaking, they pretty much say the same, the mannerisms are the same, and indeed you probably still have a lot to share in that regard. I think it would just be a great way for us to share ideas about parenting and emergency preparedness. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and if you want to support the channel, you can get yourself a bug out roll. These are actually great for family preparedness. It's a great system to organize all of your family's gear. So check it out. I'll post a link in the description. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.